All right, welcome to the Imperfectly Inspirational Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Bowman. We're so glad to have each and every one of you tuning in this week. And we're going to continue our 3-week series titled Seeking, Finding, and Rejoicing. And over these past few weeks, we've been exploring what it truly means to seek God, to find Him in our lives, and how those actions lead us to this place of rejoicing. And this week, we're going to dive into the final part of the series. And I'm so excited because we're going to be focusing on the theme of rejoicing in the Lord. And this is something that naturally flows from our relationship with God. And as we wrap up this series, I want to remind you that seeking, finding, and rejoicing, they're not meant to be separate, isolated events. They work together to shape our walk with God and to guide us to the life that He desires for us. And the more that we seek Him, the more that we find Him. And the more that we find Him, the more that we rejoice in Him. And it's a beautiful cycle that builds our relationship with God and equips us to share His greatness with others. So today's passage is coming from Psalms 96. And I really think that it's a perfect example of what it means to rejoice in the Lord. And this psalm has a lot to teach us about the natural outpouring of joy that comes from knowing who God is. And it also calls out for us to go beyond just personal rejoicing and to take that joy out into the world. Now, before we dive into this psalm, I want to share kind of a personal story. You know, growing up, I had this favorite vacation spot that was in Virginia Beach, Virginia. Oh my goodness, I absolutely loved those trips. And every year when we started planning, I would anxiously count down on the calendar the days until we were going to leave. And I couldn't wait to get my feet in the sand and enjoy this massively big boardwalk that they had. And I had a few favorite restaurants that I would always go to every time. And really just to be by the water was another favorite. Everything about that place was perfect to me. Virginia Beach was my place of rest and joy. And when we started planning, or when it would get closer to the time, I remember telling literally everyone that I could think of that I was going on vacation. And I even remember telling the neighbor's cat once, which I'm sure it didn't care, but I couldn't contain my excitement either way. And I loved the anticipation, the experience, and the joy that I found going there. Now, in a similar but grander way, you know, my walk with God has grown into that same kind of excitement. And as I've gotten to know Him more deeply, I have found that spending time with God fills me with this overwhelming sense of awe and joy in my life. And ultimately, the more that I experience Him, the more I want to share that experience with the world. And I think that's the heart of what this psalm, Psalms 96, is talking about. Now, this psalm to me it's a beautiful anthem of praise. And it starts out with a call to rejoice. So I want to go read this psalm. We're not going to read it in the same way that we normally do. We're going to read it a few verses at a time, and then we're going to break that down. So let's go ahead and jump into Psalms 96. We want to jump in verses 1 through 3. Now, here at the beginning of the psalm, there's a clear command. He says, verse 1, "Oh, sing to the Lord a new song. Sing to the Lord all the earth. Sing to the Lord, bless His name, tell of His salvation from day to day, declare His glory among the nations, His marvelous works among all the peoples." See, here we find 4 actions: sing, tell, bless, and declare. Now, these things that are mentioned, they're not just suggestions, they're commands. And when we experience God's greatness in our lives, our natural response is to express it. And these actions, they don't just stop at a personal worship. They extend outward into the world. We're not just called to enjoy our relationship with God. Now, we are called to enjoy it, but not just keep it to ourselves, but to share it with others. Just like I couldn't wait to tell everyone about my upcoming vacation, it's kind of like that. Once we taste and see how good God is, we are compelled to share it with the people around us. We don't just keep this good news to ourselves, we declare it. And notice that this is an ongoing process. We see that it says, tell of His salvation from day to day. It's not just a one-time event that we do. We just tell somebody once and it's over. See, God's glory is continuously fulfilling. God continues to do good things in our life every day, and these things are continuous. The joy and the glories of the Lord will be continuous in our lives each and every day. Now, the next few verses here, verses 4 through 6, they tell us why we should rejoice. And it's because of who God is. It says, "For great is the Lord, and greatly to be praised. He is to be feared above all gods. For all the gods of the peoples are worthless idols, but the Lord made the heaven. Splendor and majesty are before him. Strength and beauty are in his sanctuary." These verses are focusing on the greatness and supremacy of God. We're called to rejoice because there is no one like him. When we begin to seek God and to find him, we learn more about his attributes. We learn more about his holiness, his power, his majesty, his beauty, all the things about him. And we learn that nothing in all of creation compares to him. And in our world today, it is really easy to put other things before God. Money, fame, success, pleasure. But when we truly understand who God is, friend, we can't help but declare that he is supreme. He is worthy of all of our praise because everything else, it's fleeting. It's ultimately powerless compared to God, the creator of the universe. Let's continue moving on. Verses 7 through 10, we see that the psalmist here is calling for worship in community. It says, "Ascribe to the Lord, O families of the peoples. Ascribe to the Lord glory and strength. Ascribe to the Lord the glory due his name. Bring an offering and come into his courts. Worship the Lord in splendor of holiness. Tremble before him, all of the earth. Say among the nations, the Lord reigns. Yes, the world is established. It shall never be moved. He will judge the peoples with equity." This part of the psalm highlights that worship isn't just an individual activity. Too many times we want to focus on God by ourselves, go and just not share it with anybody. And while personal worship is important, it is very important and encouraged many times in the Bible that we are to be together in community. And ultimately, as Christians, we are stronger when we stand together on the truth. I want to say that again. We are stronger when we stand together on the truth. Not the prosperity gospel, not the gospel that goes against all God, what he said, not any false gospel, the truth of who God is. And guess what? We're called to give God glory, to fear him in reverence. And we're also called to offer him our best. And when we gather as a body of believers, our worship, it reflects the unity of the church. And ultimately that makes us a powerful witness to the world of God's greatness. And also notice that the declaration here that the Lord reigns, we are to proclaim that God is sovereign and that his justice is going to prevail. And in these verses here, it's a reminder that God is not just present in our lives. And sometimes that's hard to really fathom in our minds. We tend to think, okay, I'm praying to God. He's focused here. He's focused on me. We tend to forget that he's God. And while he may be focused on a moment in our lives that we're praying about or whatever, he's also actively reigning all over creation. In these last verses here, we see the psalmist is painting this vivid picture of the future when all of creation is going to recognize God's greatness. It says, "Let the heavens be glad and let the earth rejoice. Let the sea roar and all that fills it. Let the field exalt and everything in it. Then shall all the trees of the forest sing joy before the Lord, for he comes to judge the earth. He will judge the world in righteousness and the peoples in his faithfulness." This is a beautiful vision of God's return. Not only will all us humans rejoice, but all of creation, because why? All creation was made by him, for him. Everything will rejoice. God's coming to judge the earth, and his judgment is going to be perfect. This is a reminder that we live with the hope as Christians of Christ's return, when all of the things are going to be made right, and then we will experience the fullness of God's glory. So what does all of this mean for us today? Well, as we wrap up this series on seeking, finding, and rejoicing, here's the main takeaway. Rejoicing in the Lord isn't just a response to what God does for us. it's also a call to action. We're called to share His greatness with the world. We're called to declare His glory to the nations, to worship together, and to eagerly await His return. Rejoicing in God is something that flows naturally when we seek Him and then we find Him. But it's also a responsibility. It's a duty to share the joy that we have in Him with those around us. And as you go through your week, I want to encourage you to reflect on the greatness of God. I want you to express your joy through praise, and I want you to find ways, and there's ways to do it, friend, to declare His glory to those who need to hear it. And folks, that's all that I have this week. I really enjoyed this whole series of seeking, finding, and rejoicing. It's helped me with my walk with God a little closer, and I hope that this series has helped you as well. And of course, as I say each week, there's nothing better than the free gift of the Word of God. So if you know anybody that would love to hear this, or this could help them out with their studies, definitely share it. But if you're listening for the first time and you like what you hear, thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, or whichever platform you're on, so this way you don't miss out on the newest episodes each and every week. But folks, as I say each week, I love each and every one of you, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the week.